And we are live and good to go. So wonderful to have you here, Erin. Welcome everybody to this session with one of the best titles ever. How to make fierce, meaningful, craveable learning experience in the digital world. So this has been something that we've been talking about of, designing for digital first, and it's a different opportunity. And at the same time, how do you get through all the noise of the juggles that we're all going through? So we're so excited, Erin, to have you here taking us through, giving your insights from Desk Light. I will be taking care of the session feed and the Q&A. Everyone, please make sure you use those two things. You know how it works by now. And with that, I will let you take it away.
Great. Thanks, Liz, for hosting. And thank you, Michelle Webb, for inviting me to do this today. I look forward to hearing the Q&A at the end and look forward to walking through this here for the next few minutes. But first, to introduce myself, as Liz said, I'm the founder and Chief Creative Officer at Desk Light. So we started Desk Light about 6 years ago. Some of our clients have been Bloomberg Philanthropies, McGraw-Hill, and Techstars. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Techstars later as applicable to our work. And I also taught as adjunct faculty for quite some time. I've taught at Northwestern University and Institute of Design at IIT, Columbia College here in Chicago, and founded several alternative education programs over the years in between consulting things. So excited to share more of my experience perhaps at the end. And I share that because I come to this space and this work as equal parts instructional designer, human-centered designer, and teacher educator. So excited to dive in and share. So first, to get us started, I'd like to take us to, I believe, 1994 or so, Renaissance Man, you might remember, with Danny DeVito. So this movie is really a beautiful movie as it relates to teaching, of course, in an offline setting, in a traditional classroom setting. But I'm pointing to it because it's a really amazing way to think about bonding and being with our learners in real time or in the digital world by really looking at their own personal experiences and finding hooks for how we can really understand what motivates them, what they're thinking about, and how to meet them so that these learning experiences that we're all designing will make a difference for them, and they'll remember them, and they'll talk about these experiences and share them along the way with their peers and other people in their lives. So there's a moment that you might recall if you've seen this movie where Danny DeVito, as the teacher of these folks that are in the military at the time, says, you guys don't want to hear about Hamlet, but the scene starts to show the fact that they really do. The learners really do want to learn because he's mastered the technique of hooking into what motivates them in order to get them interested in something like Hamlet, which is ironic to the audience that he's serving in some ways. So having said that, we're going to move into this idea of adult learning principles that Danny DeVito's character in Renaissance Man is so good at. And I'm pointing to these principles and going to show how and talk about them and then show how they've applied in some of our work at Desk Light. So adult learning principles you might be familiar with, very different than child principles, pedagogy. There's another word for adult learning, of course, where we're separating them. We're talking about how things are very different for adult learners versus K-12 learners. And so I'm pointing to these things because they're important for us and really the framework for what we're going to talk about for the rest of our time together. So in our work, these 6 principles really hold up as we think about designing digital experiences with our partners, with our clients. So what are they? Align with independence, identify with personal experiences, like we said about Renaissance Man, find readiness moments in their lives, make learning immediately applicable. And I'll talk quite a bit about that here in a second. Find where each person's internal motivation comes from individually and not collectively. And then find the need to know. So we're going to walk through each one of these individually. So with Align with Independence, we want to be viewed as completely able to take control of our own lives as adult learners. So again, this is very different than traditional K-12 learning, where there's an expectation as children grow older that they will be learning and guided by their teacher, by their parents, etc. But with adult learners, it's very different. There needs to be this acceptance that people are completely in control of their own destiny around learning. So our role as learning designers is to design the framework and then get out of the way. And of course, this applies digitally just as much as it applies in our traditional offline work that we've been doing. I'm going to point to how this can happen digitally as well. So one way, for example, to do this digitally is to offer more choice, right? So instead of having just one or two options within a module, within a topic area, we should design for choice. So maybe give your learners 2 or 3 options so they feel like they have some autonomy with choosing where they want to go, making their own adventure moving forward. And then they feel really good about the fact that they've had that choice. And then, of course, the other meaningful things that come from that is that they might go back and do the other one because they feel like, oh, there's more options that I could participate in. And it gives them the sense that they're really making their own way forward. And studies show that people will share those bits of knowledge if they've made the choice themselves, rather than feeling like they've had to go through some linear path to get there that's been pre-designed for them. So next one, identify with life experience. So teachable moments are great for life experiences to point to, right? So having a baby, getting married, going back to school, those are all life experiences. You can think about for your own organizations, your own companies, what are those big life experiences for people? Getting a promotion, moving departments, whatever else applies for you, point to those in your mind right now and think about, how could we hook into, as learning designers, those big life moments, those big life experiences that are meaningful to them, and teach them in that moment, identify with that experience. So it gets to that, personal, qualitative level then that we can hook into and really make that experience, that learning experience, more meaningful for them. Next one, find readiness moments. So you might have been on a customer service call at some point in your life, and they try to sell you something. We don't like that typically, right? We're not ready for that moment of sales. It's not necessarily meaningful for us at that time. Maybe you've been to a health clinic before and they start to tell you about something that you didn't even know was wrong with you, or something that seems, kind of ridiculous to partake in at that point, based on your health or your age or whatever. You're not ready for those things. So it's not meaningful to you, and it's not something, it's going to probably make you more uncomfortable and angry than anything. So how does that apply to our work, right? So thinking about the idea that, we're really working to find the places in our learners' lives where we can find those readiness moments, hook into that experience, like we were saying. So, how can they really elevate and have a more ideal experience through what you're working to teach them, what you're designing to teach for them, because you are empathetic to their real understanding of where they are. So we'll talk about how that applies in the digital world as well. Make learning immediately applicable. So this is a big one. I love, in our work, we point often to retail environments that have some kind of a learning initiative attached to it. Health centers where you can sit and learn something and it feels like you are autonomous and empowered to learn that at your own speed when you feel like it's meaningful to you. Sometimes even hair salons, as ridiculous as that sounds, sometimes have learning available in like a kiosk or, some kind of signage, and you can sit there and sort of figure out what you might like to do to your hair or your makeup or whatever. So those kinds of fun things we can kind of watch and learn from in the world, where we're seeing that learning really can happen anywhere, and because those kinds of consumer experiences are teaching us that learning can be immediately applicable, it's fun to think about how we can do that in our work as trainers, as learning designers, right? So instead of something having to happen within a portal online or within a classroom sort of setting, conference room setting, what if the learning is more bite-sized and it happens throughout the course of time in different parts of the building and different parts of the employee's experience? It's fun to start to think about how to pull that stuff apart so that it is more relevant and it helps them in that moment. And when they learn that, they're applying it right away in that moment. So of course, we know that this is true for training, a new barista at Starbucks. This has always been the case where you learn it, you apply it, you practice it, you get feedback from your manager. But think about it for an executive or somebody more senior. How can we design in that way so that we're really empathetic to them? We're not trying to give them too much dosage all at the same time. We're just slowly helping them to learn something new, to train people better, to manage better, etc. And find where each person's internal motivation comes from. So Rogers, one of the founders of the humanist approach, wrote in 1969 that our goal in shared learning is to develop fully functional people. So in my courses that I've taught at Northwestern and Institute of Design, for example, every single time I teach a new class, the first day I ask my learners, my students, why are you here? And that really reveals very quickly, of course, what it is that's on their mind, what's motivating them to be there in that classroom, what's motivated them to sign up for the graduate courses, the program that they've decided to embark upon. So, what can we really do with our work in companies and organizations to understand what's motivating people to be there? And once we hook into that motivation, then we can design, of course, better services, better programs, better trainings, etc. And find the need to know. So audiences must understand and link to their need to know before participating or interacting with new learning begins. So this is key and a bit more tactical, but sometimes I find that as learning designers, we try to do that while the learning is happening, while the training is happening. But it's important to help the audiences, the learners, know why they're there, what they need before that training actually starts. So our learners, just to summarize those principles, our learners are very busy, of course, especially the more senior they are, goes without saying. So hooking into these principles, especially for more senior learners, more mature, seasoned, experienced learners, is really important as we design these new programs and trainings. So next, I wanted to point to quickly some of our work that we've done with Techstars, which is a global tech accelerator out of Boulder, Colorado. They have accelerator programs all over the world now. They're arguably one of the most successful tech accelerator programs in the world. And they came to us because they had not really put together too much of a education curriculum, a driving force around what they're looking to teach their founders that are selected to be part of their programs across the globe. And the director of education really needed a scalable, efficient way to teach the learners because he was traveling a lot. He was really looking to learn more on technology and a digital tool to be able to save him time, resources, et cetera. And then also know that he could hire more people underneath him to support him if we had a good curriculum in place. So we took everything that he had been doing offline and brought it online. And I want to just point to the principles that we just walked through in order to talk about what we were thinking about, how we pulled these principles in as we designed this hub. So we really, the biggest insight, the biggest thing that came from this project was the idea of need to know and aligning with independence. So we talked with, in the spirit of human-centered design, we talked with a lot of current founders that were in the programs, folks that had considered Techstars but went a different direction in another program or decided to go on their own to build their businesses, and alumni of Techstars, to really understand what they had wanted and needed, and perhaps what they didn't really get out of the education that Techstars offers. So the bottom line here is that they really wanted to feel like they had access to a curriculum and a set of tools without being badged at all. They didn't care about that at all, without being credentialed in any way outside of just knowing that they're part of the Techstars program, which is very selective, very challenging to get into. Only a few people get in each year. So that was enough for them. And beyond that, they wanted to feel like they had access to these tools, these bits, topic areas of curriculum when they needed it. And they wanted to be able to get in here and not feel like they were being graduated from one topic to another, but that they could go into, the 12th topic if they wanted to, and then come back to the first one, depending on if they're, challenged by giving a pitch next week and thinking about those tools versus aligning more and more with understanding their customers. So these topics that we designed were meant to be less linear, organized, but less linear, and also able to watch and learn from over and over and over again. Because as a founder, you might watch that pitch talk a couple of times and then need to come back to it 6 weeks later and watch it again. So we wanted these to be a bit evergreen, if you will, so that they're exciting to watch over and over again for this particular audience. So on this slide, just pointing to aligning with independence was really important. Wall Street Journal highlighted that as something that was really different for this project. Make it immediately applicable. Again, like this stuff is applicable now in the moment, like 2 hours after you watch this, you go into your next meeting and you're able to use that knowledge from this toolkit right away. And find the need to know. So we did, again, with all of the empathetic research that we did, we were really thinking about what the topic titles should be, what these high-level headlines should be in order to make sure that they resonated really well with the founders. And just to point to a couple more things quickly so that we can get to Q&A, find readiness moments. We made trailers for some of the topics. You can see with understand your customers, we made a trailer so that they could really understand, are they ready for this? Is this something that they want to dive into more fully with the other videos and with the worksheets that are available under this particular topic area? So, what's a quick, 10-second, 20-second teaser, if you will, that can let your learners know if it's something that they're choosing to dive into now or not. Find internal motivation. So the way that we wrote these worksheets was really about them, helping them reflect on their own personal experience and what they need to learn more about. So it's helping them to actualize that and not do more work than they really need to, so they can sort it out on their own. And last, identify with life experience. So this was an extra learning sort of portal that we put in here, where it's encouraging folks to go out and learn on their own, to do some empathy research on their own in order to get better and smarter about the businesses that they're starting. So through the way that we wrote these and filmed these, it really helps them, the learner, the founder, to know what is it that they need to learn from people as they talk to them a little bit more. And it doesn't really need to be more than that. So a little extra credit here. So all that to say, this resource here, if you haven't read through it, it's definitely an academically rigorous textbook, but really helpful as it relates to all the things that we've talked about today. And if you're interested in checking out the Techstars resource, it's just toolkit.techstars.com. And it's completely open and available to anybody who's interested in entrepreneurship. And that's really been a win for that project as well, where Techstars wanted to just make it available to colleges, universities, corporate leaders in order to push entrepreneurship further faster. So with that, I will stop, and I welcome any questions or reflections that everyone has.
Too awesome. Thank you so much, Erin. I loved it. I took a lot of screenshots, so thank you very much.
Of course, of course.
So a couple of questions. So the first one is, what's the method to continuously upgrade, and what can we offer to add value to the curriculum?
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a great question. Yeah, in our work at Desklight, we talk a lot about adaptability. So what's the plan when we hand off these digital toolkits for our partners to be able to, of course, leverage the changes that they need to make very tactically in the LMS or the WordPress site that we designed for them, for example. But also, what's the strategy for continuing to build into the bones of the curriculum that we make together at the beginning? So we always have that conversation about adaptability in that way. And then, of course, adaptability as it relates to what can the actual learners put into these tools to make them better, smarter, and what's the community building aspect here, where is there that sort of function where they can learn on their own, but also learn together in cohorts or small groups. So hopefully that gets to the essence of your question.
I love it. And yeah, perfect. And then the next one, how do you align with personal experience and motivation on a broad scale across the organization? What do those principles look like in action when you don't always have direct connection with your learners?
When you don't have direct connection with your learners, I would say I often lean on the human-centered design process, and if you don't have truly direct ways to talk with learners in real time by continually researching with them, testing new ideas, making sure there's a good feedback loop system going on there. I often say you can reach out to the next level of folks that understand the learners. Are there managers that you can talk to see if things are resonating? Just anything you can do to get past the survey, so to speak, and really talk to real people in real time about how they're using and enjoying really the learning experiences that you're designing.
I love it. And it's that aspect of how to make it really applicable, and how can you integrate some of their ideas that come back into as you look to how are you adapting and as it progresses moving forward. I love it. Awesome. So and I also, and this is also what came in the comments, I think it was really interesting. I haven't seen that before, where you really drew the differentiation between pedagogy and andragogy in terms of, how do we approach it for adult learning, because it's a very different target group of, it was funny, the last summit, someone said it so kindly. They said, here we talk about like teaching people is like herding cats. Teaching facilitators or L&Ders is like, facilitating border collies. So, so adult learning to the extreme, but it's that real piece of how do you get that motivation in of what do I want to do with it and how do I want to carry it forward?
Yeah, I think there's so much to say about that, Liz, and that could be a whole nother talk, right? Just pulling that apart even more. Just especially with digital as our friend, as our tool now to be able to design great adult learning experiences online versus just Zooming it all day, right? Like no one wants to sit and listen to a 3-hour lecture. It's just not equitable. It's not fair. It doesn't feel good to anybody. And even, college students and high school students feel that way as well. But for us as learning designers, we truly have that opportunity to think differently about this stuff and be so much more empathetic to what our learners are dealing with every day. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of noise going on. We were talking yesterday. It's like, okay, I'm balancing my work. I'm balancing my 2-year-old.
Yes.
And I'm at the same time. Exactly. So, too wonderful. Any other questions? I know that this connection will be going on, so absolutely loved it. Thanks so much to Michelle Webb for bringing you in. This is an absolutely important piece to say, how do we continue that discussion? How do we continue what we're doing in a smart way as we look to digital is not going to go away. It's only going to get stronger, but how can we be more mindful in terms of how we use it and design it for the learners? Awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I see Michelle's pointing to mapping experiences. That's also an excellent resource, an excellent book as it relates to what we're talking about here. So yeah, thank you again, Liz and Michelle, for inviting me. I look forward to listening in later today and tomorrow to hear other speakers if other presenters are on. So I look forward to getting to know more folks too.
Awesome. Well, great.
Good.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.